Hello, folks. Back in the 1960s, late 1960s, early 1970s, three brothers here in the U.S. came on the scene, called themselves the Last Poets. They spit a lot of poetry about social conditions, the hood, living in the hood, ghetto life, poems about riding on the subway in New York, poems about black love and black thighs, woo, black thighs. And um, of course, the colonizers and things that they did and how life was. Um, I had their first album, so back in the day, you go over people's houses, you take some of your music with you, and different people gather up and chill, listen to the music. And during that time, we was listening to the Last Poets too, of course. I left that first album over somebody's house one time. It's one of them things I never got back and got that album, right? And I have another album of theirs. Now, I noticed a week ago, because what I did, I had downloaded all their poems. And I was looking through my playlist and I noticed two poems off of the album was faded out, right? So when I clicked them, it said not available in your area. Right? This is on my Apple Music. And I said, man, that's weird. That these was taken out. But anyway, this is the album I still have, of course. And these are the brothers here. And they also would have somebody in the background playing drums, what we used to call Congo drums when we was kids, but they would be African drums. And on this album, one poem that was taken out was called, well, not on this one. One poem was taken out called The Lone Ranger. That's one of their poems. And The Lone Ranger, that was about a TV show we used to watch as kids, right? And the Lone Ranger, he was this white guy. He rode a white horse. He had a white hat. He had a black mask over his eyes. And he had two shiny guns with pearl handles. And he had a faithful companion named Tonto. Now, Tonto was an Indian, one of the indigenous people of America. And that was his sidekick. And they ride around together around the old Western days, the cowboy days, and they go chasing criminals and doing good and all that stuff. But on that first album where they talked about the Lone Ranger, him and Tonto was riding together. And at the end of the poem, Tonto basically told him, kiss where the sun don't shine, Lone Ranger. So there's a guy back in the day, he used to sing some like comedy music. And he had a song, The Lone Ranger, right? So Tonto, I take it, they portrayed him as a Navajo Indian. You had all kind of Indian tribes all over America, just like you have all kind of tribes all over Africa. So I guess they was portraying Tonto as a Navajo. And in this song, he was saying the Lone Ranger and Tonto was riding down the Navajo Trail. When the band of Indians found them, proceeded to surround them, and the Lone Ranger turned kind of pale, right? So Lone Ranger was saying to Tonto, like, look like we in a little bit of trouble. And the Indian Tonto said, what you mean we, white man? What you mean we? He said, you're in heap big trouble. That means big, big trouble, but you're in heap big trouble. And it don't involve me, white man. No, it don't involve me. That was a comical song. But anyway, on this album, they have a song here called Before the White Man Came. down the bottom here. And that was these guys doing a poem like they were the indigenous people of this country, America. And they were saying how beautiful and wonderful everything was before the white man came. They was talking about the land and the nature, and they were spiritual people, and they was all about the land and respecting the land. And they say these people came and they was talking about how they ruined everything. If you knew the history of what they did to the indigenous people of this country, like they did to people all over the world, well, you would understand anyway. You saw what they did in Africa. But they talked about the things that they brought with them when they came to this land: evil and treachery and diseases. They start dying of diseases like smallpox, things that they never had, and how wonderful life was before, as they say in the poem, before the white man came. The people here, when we went to school, when we was kids, all the history we ever got was about what the wonderful colonizers did, in this country and actually around the world. You never heard no black history at all. No black person ever did nothing. There was one guy that we got every year. We had a Negro History Week, right? And they told us about a scientist named George Washington Carver and things he did with peanuts, and that was basically it. You never knew black folks ever did anything, in this country besides being slaves. That's where they tried to tell you your whole existence began as a slave, in America. But so here in America, we was always taught as children that Christopher Columbus, he sailed the 7 seas and he sailed over here and discovered America. And as I'm hearing recently, they saying, no, he got here and discovered he was lost. That's how he stumbled on America. And how do you discover something, already discovered by people that's already living here? But what they start doing, especially the Indians here in America, they stopped celebrating Columbus Day and they started celebrating what they call Indigenous Peoples Day, right? Well, like I say, everything, all your history was taught about how wonderful they was and how they did everything and civilized everywhere. They used to try to call the Indians here savages and all kinds of stuff, and they needed to be civilized. And you look what they brought with them to places. Well, what they did to the Indians here was really something, and you ever read hear about the Trail of Tears, and they took all the land from them like they do everywhere else, and put them on reservations and cut their hair and indoctrinate them and brainwash them and do everything, that they do. But that's really the real history of America. Now back to this Lone Ranger. Actually, there's a TV series on Netflix called Bass Reeves, right? And no, he's on Paramount Plus, but it's called Bass Reeves. Now, that's a guy who back in the 1800s, after the Civil War, they made him a Texas Ranger, right? Black guy. And he was known for bringing in all these criminals, loads and loads of criminals. And of course, black man, he rode by himself. He probably had to do everything alone. But that's where the actual Lone Ranger came from. He was the Lone Ranger. They came up with this guy with the white horse and the white hat and the 2 shiny guns and the white face. But that's how they do things here. Now, way back in the I guess, the 1700s and getting into the 1800s when invaders came here. They had a creature here called the beaver. They was known for building dams in the water, and they would cause the water to spread out, and it would form other little lakes and spread across the land. And it was great for the land because it watered the land, and all kind of crops and vegetation could grow in those places. And the people that came here, they started killing the beavers. They was killing them for pelts, so basically for money, killing the beavers. And they was killing them until they almost wiped them out. And it's a species that had to be protected, right? Same with the bison. When the Indians here, they used to hunt the bison, right? Which is like a buffalo, but it's very hairy. And they would use the skins and the hair for coats and for blankets in the wintertime, and use the meat to feed the village. And once these folks got here and they saw a buffalo, it was just something to kill. You know, they didn't kill them for any particular reason. They just killed them because they was there. Almost wiped them out, where the buffalo had to be protected. And I went with a woman who had a girlfriend years ago, and her son and his cousin, they was about 12 years old. They was in this organization called the Civil Air Patrol. So it was like the Boy Scouts, but they would get to go up in planes, and they used to camp out in the woods and stuff. So one time I took the son and the cousin, I took them camping. It was the first time I went camping as an adult. And it was the kind of camping I was going to do, you know, after I got a little more experience. But it actually turned out to be camping where we was up on a mountain and nobody around. It was raining when we got there and set up camp. I actually got a fire started in the rain, and we was camped out in the tent. And a ranger came up. It was a path leading up to where we was. He didn't come up the path. He flanked us and came out of the woods. And he came up to me and said, yeah, you know, you're the only people on the mountain. And I said, I didn't know that, but, you know, we're here. And he said, well, I have to ask the commander, you know, if you could stay. So he looked at the kids' identification and saw that they was in the Civil Air Patrol. And this is where they camped. And it was government land, right? Or state-owned land. So he went away. He came back later and he said, yeah, the commander said, since you already got a campsite set up, you know, y'all can stay. And the kids got ID. He said, what we're going to do, we're going to spend the night down here at the bottom of the path. Now, that was actually to protect us because with a state that I live in, Pennsylvania, that is known to have the most race hate groups in the country. All kind of Klansmen, skinheads, Aryans, everything up there. And so we was up there in their country. You know, so I guess these folks couldn't let nothing happen to us on this government property. So they kept these two guys down there at the bottom of the path, who was down there target practice, shooting up a bunch of trees all evening, you know. So, but the thing about that place, it was up in the place called Hawk Mountain. That was right next door, right? And I rode over there and looked around. Hawk Mountain was famous for hawks, right? These birds of prey that just majestically soared around the mountains, and you know they would hunt anything on the ground, any small animals, squirrels, foxes, things like that. And what these same folks did back in the, I guess, late 1800s, sometime might have been the early 1900s, since all these hawks was there flying around, to them it was something to kill, right? So they just went and sat on the side of the mountain, and they would just gun down hawks, just sit up there taking target practice and shooting every hawk that they saw until they almost wiped the doggone hawks out. And the hawks had to be protected, and they had to make it illegal to shoot the hawks, right? And I guess the same kind of thing could have happened in Africa. They was over there, one thing, big game hunting, you know, shooting down lions and elephants, and they shooting elephants for money, for the tusks, so they can take the ivory and make stuff. And I guess they had the uh, indigenous people in Africa hunting these creatures for the money so that these other creatures can have it and make their statues. And they was killing the rhinoceros at one time. And what I understand, that was because the Asians wanted the horns. And they would grind up the horns, use them as an aphrodisiac, and grind up the horns, right, and drink the stuff. And I guess it had the Asians thinking they'd be walking around with their penis sticking up in the front of them like a doggone rhinoceros horn or something. So they were over there killing the rhinoceros. I was in a safari lodge when I was in Johannesburg, or was it Pilanesberg? But I noticed the rhinoceros didn't have a horn. And apparently they have to saw the rhinoceros horn off to keep them from being killed for the horn. I said, boy, that's a shame. You look at this majestic creature who has this big horn. I mean, what do you affiliate with a rhinoceros? There's one or two horns coming up out of his snout. And they have to take the horn to keep the doggone animal from being killed, But shit, that's what these folks do. They kill crazy. kill crazy. And anyway, the next thing, I had a video where I was showing some South African music and some Nigerian music. And I was talking about how the Nigerians is really something in Africa and the Jamaicans are really something in the Caribbean. And all over Africa, you had the Chinese pumping money into Africa and basically to help secure their future. And that's a cool thing, the Chinese government is feeding money into Africa. But a lot of Chinese people have been coming to Africa. And apparently what they do in Africa is disrespect the African people, right? And they always been all over the Caribbean. I was married to a woman from the Caribbean 20 years ago, and they was all down in the Caribbean on the islands doing the same thing in the Caribbean. But what they've been doing, I guess you know all about some of the things they were doing in Africa. So you take Nigeria, for instance. They had a supermarket in Nigeria, and they had like no Nigerians allowed to come and shop in the supermarket. And the Nigerians padlocked the joint, shut it down. And they talk like something else might have been going on in that market also, but they shut it down, right? And they have an island called St. Lucia in the Caribbean. I've been there before. And supposed to have been Chinese and some Europeans bought property around near a beach. And they privatized the beach, put up signs, no trespassing, private beach, and all kind of stuff. And the St. Lucians went down there with their signs and their music, and they partied on the beach. This is our country. This is our beach. You don't come in here and privatize our doggone beach and tell us we can't come on our beach. That's what they did there. And the Jamaicans, who don't play no way, they built a hotel in Jamaica, and I think it was Chinese and European partners together. But they build this hotel, and then they say, no Jamaicans allowed in this hotel. What did the Jamaicans do? They burn the hotel to the ground. Burn it to the ground, right? So, these people going to come in, and they're going to try to disrespect you. They're going to test the waters, and sound like they've been doing it all over Africa anyway, but I'm waiting to see if they're going to try something like that in that Sahel region of Africa. I bet they won't be trying it there. But, these people will treat you how you allow yourself to be treated, right? And to that, I'd say, look, don't let them disrespect you. Don't let them do it.